Hello, my beautiful friends. It's me, Kayla, and you are Robin, Valentina, and Coral, or anybody who has a color as their name. Shout out to you. You must subscribe. Here's my graphic for the month of November. Everything that I read, there were 20 books. I had a good handful of 4 and 5 stars, which is pretty powerful, and I really needed it this time of year. In fact, my average rating for the month, granted, I didn't rate 2 books because I'm trying not to rate erotica and memoirs, so maybe those would have messed it up just a little bit, but not too much. My average was a 4 for the entire month. I haven't gotten above a 3.7, I don't think, this entire year. Maybe even, no, yeah, August was a 3.7. October was a 3.3, so we're moving up in the world. I bought a lot of books. I read from a lot of authors I've read from before. So these are my stats if you want to peruse. I've gotten a lot of people asking me how I make them. I just make them in Google Sheets, but then I Photoshop them into a graphic. If you're new to my wrap-ups this year, I have chosen to not re-review all of the books I've already vlogged. So we run through everything and I remind you of my ratings in case like you saw something in a vlog and you were like, oh, I need to remember to read that because Kayla gave it a high rating or a low rating or whatever. And then you forgot about it. So here's your reminder. The latest vlog that I posted was my sequels vlog. I read The Strength of the Few, which I gave a 3.5. I read Brimstone, which I gave a 2.5. A Mouthful of Dust by Nevo, a 4. Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man, a 3.75. And The Game is Afoot, a 4. My buzzword vlog of the month, I read Your Favorite Scary Movie, which I gave a 5. And I also read The Never King. The Never King? Is that what it's called? And I did not rate that one. Then I did a standalone video for one book, which I never do. Okay, enough! I just had a feeling I was gonna love this, and then I did. So now I have a whole vlog where I read a 5-star book, and that's The Raven Scholar. Definitely recommend. You guys get your shit together. I don't care enough to fix that. I did a vlog where bingo chose my TBR, but also I was trying to accomplish some goals and like check off some of my favorite things to read, some of my favorite tropes. I ended up reading female fantasy, which I gave a 4.25, if I'm remembering correctly. The Devil She Knows, which I gave a 3.75. In my mind, this is like one of my favorite books, and I just wish it didn't have a romance because I didn't care about the romance part, but it is a romance novel. I think I'm going to talk about that a little more in an upcoming video where I talk about my favorite thing in books, which is like this alternate realities, exploring alternate realities. And then Uncanny Valley Girls, which was the memoir that I read. Okay, and then I have these 4, which technically haven't been featured in a video yet, but they will be in the next couple weeks. So I normally would just put this in my next wrap up, but my next wrap up is already going to be so huge, like holding the stack and posting the story I post. I've decided to not lie to you. So I'm just going to tell you I read these, and that you're going to hear about them in vlogs. So I promise there will be content about them. But I did read Automatic Noodle. I'll talk about that soon. And then I read these 3 books all about periods and cycle syncing. This is Period Power by Maisie Hill. This is In the Flow by Alyssa Biddy. And the Cycle Syncing Handbook by Angie Marie. I actually gave all of these 4 stars. And though they're similar, they all bring something different to the table as far as the cycle syncing conversation. And I will be having a much longer discussion about that in December with you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. And then finally, I have these 5 books. 2 of them I have made content about. But this one you might not have seen unless you're a channel member. So we have a Besties book club. We read a variety of genres and we do it seasonally. This year we've read like fantasy, nonfiction, dystopian, like futuristic sci-fi. I like leaning towards sci-fi, and I think we'll probably continue that with some interesting releases in 2026. But this was one of my favorite discussions to have because I got to talk one by one about each individual essay, and we really got into the nitty-gritty of like how this book was even structured because I love how it was put together. I gave this a 4.5. It's essays from some of my favorite horror authors about why they love horror. And every author in here really does have a different answer to that question, whether it's that they felt like uncool in school and horror helped them escape, or they felt unsafe at home and horror was something that introduced them into a career that they could possibly participate in. Some of these essays talked about culture and how horror impacts culture, how culture impacts horror, society's collective desires, feminism, immigration, queerness, and then beyond the themes that they wanted to talk about, they talked about their own childhood a lot of times and what it was like growing up being them and finding a passion for horror. They almost all took the opportunity to highlight the horror that introduced them to the genre to begin with and just like geeking out about movies and books. And then the best part about this is just how it was put together. And I've said this about short story collections, but I also feel this way about essays. I need the editor to put together a little thing at the beginning that explains why they wanted to choose this author, like the impact this author has had, what they feel like the author's trying to say in their essay or their short story. And though this just looks like a one-page italicized blurb, which it is, it packs in so much information because each one of these horror authors, Becky Siegel Spratford took the time to tell us like where she thinks we should start with that author if we've never read from them before. And then also a comparable author if you've read all of that author's works, which I have in a lot of these cases, somebody who I should read next. I think the essays were put in the perfect order. They were all quite different. Some of them, like Tananarive Due, wrote the quintessential university essay that you could so easily as a professor take to your students and say, read this, and that's how you should form an essay. Like that's how to write the perfect essay that hits all the points in the right order and answers the question and brings the reader back into the conversation. But then some authors like Josh Malerman and Grady Hendrix showed how to like put creative writing within an essay, and they were so engaging, even though I think a lot of the people who I was talking about this with really didn't like how Josh Malerman's was written. It is very unique to him, and I had such a good time reading it because it just felt like you were reading fiction. And then Grady Hendrix's was genuinely unsettling, which like, how do you do that with nonfiction? Stephen Graham Jones was the last one in here, my favorite author, and he just so perfectly sums everything up somehow with probably not even reading any of the other essays. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 is because there were 3 essays in here that I just don't think added anything to it. They were just a lot more surface level, and I think that would have been fine if they all kind of were that. But because some authors put like their whole passion into theirs, there was some that really felt glaringly uninspired, which is probably so rude. But they're also the authors that like I've never heard of and have such a small backlist that, not that they're not validly in here, because obviously the editor has like a passion for them, or maybe I imagine a relationship with them personally, and that's why they were included. I don't think you have to have a large audience in order to contribute to something like this. I just feel like maybe a couple were chosen because she liked that person more so than thought it would really add to the collection, because in my opinion, the last couple near the end did not. The other book that I have made content about is Futility, but it wasn't in a vlog, it was in a live show. I talked about this with my friends Steph, Erin, and Allie, and we had a range of ratings for sure, from one person not able to finish it to one who rated it very lowly, to one who was very excited to talk about this, and therefore I was as well, to connect on that level, because also the chat did not like this book. This is definitely the flop of the book club for the year. It's Futility by Nuzo Ono. I knew that it would be divisive, but not until I had picked it and read like the first 2 chapters where it talks about shriveled penises and aggressively farting and what this woman ate in order to accomplish these farts that she wanted to spread around. I didn't quite know what we had all gotten ourselves in for, and I had a good time with it. I gave this a 4, and it was nice in the live show that, you know, there was a range of ratings, and so the chat could feel represented, because there were a couple people in there who liked this. And I appreciate everyone who read this and took the time to talk with me about it. It's set in Nigeria, and we have 2 characters. One is a Nigerian woman, and she runs a restaurant where she ends up feeding, I mean, look at the cover. She ends up feeding her customers some questionable things. She's also working with a spirit and is trying to get that spirit or entity a certain thing, and they're accomplishing some goals together, I guess. That's Chia. And then we also have a character named Claire, who is a British woman who's in Nigeria visiting her boyfriend and his cousin, and there's a dynamic between all of them. Basically, these 2 women really hate themselves and everyone else, basically everyone else. They want to get revenge on the terrible men, but also they're judging every single woman they walk past. If you're somebody who needs to love a character in order to love a book, this is not the one for you. You're going to detest everyone, but also all the things that should happen to these people happen. And I think it just comes down to whether or not you mesh with the sense of humor in this book and you read it as the satire and the silly, wacky, over-the-topness. That's what I loved it for. This book was such high energy the entire time. It was just always silly. It felt like watching a soap opera, but a spiritual or supernatural kind of one with lots of terrible, offensive language. It's just for a much more niche audience than I realized when I picked it, and I'm glad that I'm that audience because I gave it a 4. Now these final 3, this is exactly what I set out this year to do, is to read 3 to 5 books every single month that I haven't included in any content and just tell you about them at the end of the month. So this is those 3, and it just so happens that 2 of these are 5 stars. And one of them, I thought going into it that it was gonna be 5 stars and one of my favorite books of the year, and it didn't quite get there. So first up, let's talk about Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbui. This was on my TBR for a while. I gave the last thing I read from this author, I can't remember what it was called in this moment, 5 stars, a glowing 5 stars. Oh, We Were Beautiful. It was called We Were Beautiful. Sorry, I put tape on this book so I could take this picture and the flap wasn't opening on the top. I love this. I love this from the second we met Nenny. Nenny is so me. She's just so nosy, and not in a negative way, but like wants to know what people in her life are up to all the time. Like when my kid gets home from school, I don't just want to know how was your day and what did you do. I want to know every single thing you did. Like I want to know what you ate for lunch. I want to know what desk you sat in. I want to know who you talked to. Like I just love to know everything about everything. So when her husband came home from his first day on the job as being a chauffeur in New York City, after just moving there from Cameroon and trying to find opportunity in America in order to stay, this entire book revolves around this family and possibly being deported, but it also deals with another family that they are working for. So the husband, Jenda, he becomes a chauffeur for this very wealthy family, and he comes home on the first day and she just like interrogates him in a very kind, loving way the second he walks in the door. And I was like, oh my God, I love this girl. I love what's happening. She's like, well, who did you drive around? How many rides did you take? What parts of the city did you visit? Like, tell me everything you saw. What did that woman look like? Do you think she's beautiful? Like, how would you describe how they were speaking? Like, did you have a rapport with people, or were you staying silent while you were driving? Like, tell me everything. And then she also gets involved working for this family. I don't know how much I should be telling you about what happens in it. Let me see exactly what it says on the back, because I don't even know that I knew exactly what this was when I picked it up, but I picked it out of my TBR jar. One of my members is the reason that I ended up reading this. The financial world is rocked by the collapse of this company that the family runs. And it's set in such a specific time. It is 2007, 2008. There's a crash. There is Obama just becoming president. And these people see such hope for their own future, but also see devastation happening for other people. And it's like how their jobs are impacted by this job loss between these this other married couple. The story really does focus on both of the married couples and their tense dynamic, and also the things that are happening in amongst all of them, because at one point Jendi is asked to keep some secrets, which weighs really heavily on him, and then his wife gets roped into it, and then she's dealing with her own personal stuff with schooling and not being taken seriously and wanting a career but wanting to grow her family and like wanting this American dream. Did I tell you I gave this 5 stars? I can't remember if I established that. This was one of my 5 stars. It was just so interesting, and I don't always love general fiction that's just about like going about life, but it's exactly what I needed in the moment, maybe because it was the only general fiction that I read this entire month. The final quarter of this was so incredibly stressful, and I loved everything that it had to say about everything. Like, there were so many themes touched on in here, and so many different relationships, and the desperation from everybody to feel safe and secure and to give a good life to the people that you love, and about opportunity and perseverance. And oh my God, it was just so good. Like, this is so good. I'm so happy that I read it. I read The Extra by Annie Neugebauer. For the first 3/4 of this book, I thought not only was this going to be 5 stars, but it was going to be one of my favorite books of the year. And then the ending let me down so bad. And at the same time, I respect it because it's such a short little novella. It's 115 pages. It's sci-fi. There's a lot of ways this could have ended, and the way that it did, I guess I respect and I accept. But I thought we were doing something specific. Like, I thought we were going to call back to the first chapter and something that happened, and it was going to explain a lot. But it left things a little more open, I guess, than not historically, like, because I love ambiguity. Not in this case. In this case, I really wanted something to happen, and I was so sure it was going to happen. It didn't even matter if I could see it coming. I wanted that ending, and I'm upset that I didn't get it. So what this is about, and I have to keep it brief because it's a short book and the blurb is short. There are 10 people who go on a backpacking trip. We're following a couple of the guides and a bunch of people who are going on the trip who have like maybe never been hiking before. And after the first night, because it's like a week-long, I read this a while ago, I think it's a week-long trip or a 3-day trip or something. The first night they realize there is an 11th person with them. And they don't know how that person got there because they know the head count really well. They know how many seats were in the van, but suddenly there's an extra person. And they just spend the entire book trying to figure out which person is an extra because they remember all of the people equally. And so they don't know how this could be happening, and it's just a mindfuck for them. And it feels very tense. This is I guess, horror sci-fi, but don't expect the horror to be truly scary. It's just like this sense of unease. And I loved it. I was having such a good time. It's definitely a 4 without a doubt, even though the ending left me a little bit frustrated. And then lastly, my final 5-star of the month is Perfect Victims and the Politics of Appeal by Mohammed El-Kurd. With so many books coming out about Palestine, even not specifically like the only focus is Palestine, I'm thinking of these 2 specific things that a lot of people are talking about this year that I read and loved and rated very highly. It's obviously really important for us to prioritize and read Palestinian authors as well. And that in itself is the big discussion of this, is centering Palestinians and letting them speak for themselves, encouraging them to speak for themselves. And when they do have the opportunity and they find a way to be seen and heard, that we are seeing them and hearing them. He really challenges in these pages who is speaking up, how they are in many cases profiting off of the discussion of Palestine, and how readers are centering varied voices. Obviously, since I read and loved these books, and I see them and I've discussed how they're much more memoir that decides to talk about Palestine and the genocide and their own relationships, respectively, with media and the sanitization of in politics. Everything these are talking about is valid because they're bringing more attention to the topic, but they also both leave things to be desired if you're wanting to pick up something that is solely about the Palestinian life. And something that those books wouldn't necessarily touch is the idea of violent resistance, and this book really leans into that. It doesn't shy away from the conversation about the box that Palestinians are placed in and how they have to be perfect victims in order for the rest of the world to care about them. How women and children are prioritized in conversations. And he even started out the book, because I've shared a couple Instagram stories that are similar to this, but it's phrased so well in here, how he wrote this book a lot with a disproportionate use of masculine pronouns. He said, for far too long, the Palestinians have been reduced to women and children. One implication here is robbing women and children of their agency and their political or revolutionary contributions. Another is the further demonization of Palestinian men as deserving of death and unworthy of mourning, exiled from their loved ones' embrace. I often use he in reference to the Palestinian because I want to force the reader to come face with the Palestinian men who do deserve softness and care and safety. Much like the other books that I've read on the topic, he is also speaking on media and journalists and how an entire group of people are being spoken about When it comes to Palestine, the sacred laws of journalism are bendable, optional even. Passive voice is king. Omitting facts is standard. Fabrication is permissible. Journalists become stenographers and reporters become state secretaries as they parrot police and military narratives. They tamper with evidence. They muddle, mislead, and misconstrue, manufacturing consent for ethnic cleansing and creating confusion around murders that are clear as day. The courageous industry that boasts of speaking truth to power is but a bullhorn for the powerful. We've seen this time and time again. It's almost satirical. Anchors reject the data before their eyes to recite lies, and newspapers read like caricatures of themselves. When a 2014 Israeli airstrike on a cafe in Gaza blew 8 Palestinians to shreds, the headline from the New York Times was "Missile at Beachside Gaza Cafe finds patrons poised for World Cup. Whose missile? Whose gunfire? Who is the sniper?" It's just how demonized and dehumanized they have been and continue to be, even by the people who claim to actively want to be supporting them. Not only did this have really valuable things to say, but it was written beautifully, it was organized beautifully. There is a sense of poetry in here as well. I know this author has written a poetry collection I've heard people recommend. I would definitely recommend this to all of you, especially if you've read some of the other things out there recently and want to prioritize a voice that you should. Now, finally, we have the superlatives. It's so dark in here, I can barely read anything that I'm looking at. Best book of the month. Best book of the month. Since I did read a lot of nonfiction and fiction equally this month, I'll pick both of these. Perfect Victims and The Raven Scholar. This is what I would consider my best book of the month. Best sequel. I usually only have a couple to choose from. This month I have like 5. As much as I wanted to say, I loved the incredible fantasy sequels. The big thick ones I spent so much of my time on. I'm gonna say it was a tie between these two because these were both 4 stars. The sequel to The Empress of Salt and Fortune and the sequel to It's Elementary. A little mystery, a little fantasy. Best audiobook. Actually both of the ones that come to mind, it's specifically about the narrator. I loved both of these because of the narrator. This one just had a cadence to her voice that felt really engaging, really represented the character and kept me listening because I don't often read an entire book as the audio version, but this one, I'm pretty sure I did. And then this one, it is Ghostface, the voice of Ghostface in the movies, who narrates this, and he does the chapter titles in the Ghostface voice, and it was incredibly well done. Biggest surprise, I mean, I wouldn't have said this at the beginning of the month, but once all of the reviews started pouring in and I saw the average rating for this, which on Goodreads right now is dropping by the day, I think it's at like a 3.1 right now. I was definitely surprised by the time I read it that I actually ended up really liking it. And then biggest disappointment, I mean, it has to be Brimstone, just because anytime that I actually go out of my way to read a romantasy sequel, because it's so rare for me to even find a romantasy I like to begin with. I did like Quicksilver. I don't know now what I see in it because I feel like this has tainted my view a little bit, but I thought this was going to be like the romantasy series for me and I was finally going to be all up in one. But Brimstone was kind of a flop for many reasons. Author I want to read more from. I think the first one that comes to mind is Nuzo Ono because this is the second book I've read of hers this year, and because a lot of people aren't into her stuff, I feel even more compelled to pick her up because I'm the more niche audience and I love that. And then also Iman Hariri Kia. I want to see what else she does because I love a more self-aware feeling romance and this one really did it for me and I can't wait to see what else she puts out. One that I'll recommend the most, I think it's pretty obvious because I already said it, Perfect Victims, but also, if you do like horror and you've read some of the authors in here, like we have, who I haven't already mentioned, Rachel Harrison, Alma Katsu, Gabino Iglesias, Jennifer McMahon, Paul Tremblay, like it's really interesting getting an insight into their opinions and their own passion for horror. So this I would really highly recommend. Best cover? I don't know. Let's look at all the ones in this graphic so you can decide. You tell me what you think the best cover is. I'm going to say for me, your favorite scary movie, because I think it's inventive and it really represents going to the movies. It's popcorn. And then also favorite title is going to be your favorite scary movie because originally the title of Scream was Scary Movie and then that's what they ended up calling like the spoof of it. At the same time, it's like your favorite scary movie. This is so many of our favorite franchise. Oh, I like that one. And then favorite character. What's so crazy is I like never have an answer to this question. If you watch all my wrap-ups, you know I always struggle to think of characters I love. I have so many. I love Vera. Vera was definitely my answer a year ago. I just love her. Cozy, good vibes. Like I said, Nenny. Love Nenny. I really like Junie in female fantasy. Definitely watch my vlog for this one so you can hear all of my thoughts as I was reading it, because I don't know if the cover even like gives you, this isn't a fantasy book. If you haven't heard me talk about this, you should go back and watch that one. And then I always love following Chi in the Singing Hills cycle, because they are going around and they're getting stories and they're just so passionate about making sure everyone feels included, including themselves. Like, it's just so good. And then I also not only like Mavis, but I like all of the side characters in here. Her father, her daughter, like everyone brings something different and they're all so fun and like over the top. And then I also really like Nima from The Raven Scholar. Maybe because I spent so much time with her, but yeah, I really liked Nima. There's only one book that I'd say I hate everyone, and it's Futility. So that is my November wrap up. That is all the 20 books that I read, and some more reviews will be coming for the ones that I talked about that I haven't fully talked about, and I hope that that's okay. Let me know your favorite book of the month, if you're gonna read any of these. I'd love to chat with you in the comments, and I'll see you in December. My final wrap up for the entire year is only a month away. That seems so crazy. Okay, bye.